Hey everybody, this is Bishop John Selders with More Money CT.
And this is Pamela Selders from Connecticut Black Women.
And this is Rhonda Caldwell from Hamden Action Now.
We done teamed up. That's what we are doing. We triple teaming you tonight. Today. Listen, we wanted to jump on together and have just a little bit of a conversation about what's going to be happening tomorrow. Tomorrow is March 26th. And both at the state legislature, there are going to be two important hearings, public hearings. And we wanted to talk a little bit about what those public hearings were going to be about, what our efforts are to support those, and then do just a little bit of what I'm going to call chopping it up a little bit about what it is we need to be paying attention to. And certainly, lastly, we want to elicit your support. The first one we want to talk about is Senate Bill. No, that ain't it. That ain't it. Senate Bill.
Yes, Senate Bill.
Yeah, to extend the vote. Which one is it, Rhonda? I forgot the name.
That's Senate Bill 820.
Yeah,
and Senate Bill 5.
That's it. Senate Bill 5 and Senate Bill 820. Both of these bills are important around the vote. Now, you all, those of you who follow More Money CT or CTBW and or Hamden Action Now, you know we've been talking about the vote since the year 2, but for real, in earnest over the last 12 months plus. Last year was a general election. We had stuff going on there, and we supported the act of the governor to do executive actions so that we could vote. And come to find out, in the context of that, we are in the dark ages about this voting thing, right? We really do. We really are in the dark ages. What I'm happy about is, let me talk about my guy Isaac Glasgow and his buddy. Back in the 1820s, he was a black man, a businessman, as Pamela would say, businessman, who was the first to take an issue with the law and charge the General Assembly, the Connecticut General Assembly, and said, listen, if you want my tax dollars, and you get that, but you won't let a black man vote. And I think there's something wrong with that. And he sued and ultimately lost that case. But what he did was set in motion what we're now living off of. That today we can advocate in the ways that we are around expanding the vote. Clearly, here in Connecticut, we got some archaic, quite frankly, some archaic, voting rights issues. First off, you have to be, your heart has to be bleeding, if not, your heart has to be pumping, and you got to show up on the day that the polls are open from 6 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. Otherwise, you can't vote. The first thing is we've never had early voting here in the state of Connecticut. So the fact of business is we've had some of the most repressive and suppressive voting history in the country. Can y'all imagine? I mean, we lived it, but I guess we don't talk about it, Rhonda, do we? We don't talk about this stuff.
No, because people don't find the value of voting, and they've done a very fabulous job to make it look like it has no value. And so what has happened over the course of the last 100 years here in Connecticut is that, they have disenfranchised Black, brown, and indigenous voters so well that people are just like, it doesn't matter anyway. They're going to do what they want. And we I always think about how the New England states were so, we always knew racism and segregation and all these things were going on in our country. But in the Northeast, white folks were good to us. They treated us okay. They didn't put the water hoses and the dogs, like all the atrocities we saw in the South, the lynchings and all that. So, we have this eternal history of, we don't want white folks to be mad. Like they really been good to us, really. Right. So why do I want them to be upset? And I start challenging their seats, challenging their legislative and legal authority over us.
Right. Exactly. Right. We start doing that, then they're going to have a problem. All right.
Yes.
But it really is clear. The 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution gave the right for Black people to vote. That happened. That was the 15th Amendment. That was in 1870.
For black men.
For black men in particular, let's be clear, there wasn't no women voting.
No.
Back in the day, wasn't no women voting. So let's be clear, right? But then Connecticut did something else. This whole idea of suppressing the vote based on turnout, right? Prohibition against early voting. So what we had to do in last year is we had to get an executive order by the governor so that we could participate, not showing up at a poll, and do it early by absentee ballot. Then we had to do it because they had to put in the thing in the law for the state assembly to enact over for the general election that they had to put in that for the purposes of the COVID. Right. So this is voter suppression. You got to understand that clearly this is voter suppression.
When I was standing at the polls in November over here in the Newhartville section of Hamden, and there was people standing out wrapping around the building. It was starting to rain a little bit. It was cold. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I rolled up to some people and said, "How about the voter suppression here in Connecticut? It's ridiculous." Like, what do you mean? There's no voter suppression. I said, well, you're standing out here at the poll in the middle of a pandemic waiting to get into a locked building that exercise your civil right.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, what really thought about that?
And the other thing that happened that I thought was very weird, and that was, we had people who could not go out and vote. Because they physically weren't able to do that, and so their absentee ballot was supposed to be delivered to them. They were supposed to fill it out, and then it was supposed to be taken to one of the drop boxes. Well, in black and brown communities, they had cops doing this. They had police officers going to people's houses in case of emergencies, giving them the absentee ballots and then taking them to the drop boxes. And I just can't see why we would want police participating in the black and brown vote.
No.
It should not be participating whatsoever in our vote.
These rules are not designed for black and brown people. They never were. I mean, they don't even consider us. They don't consider our relationship with the police, our relationships in the communities. Like, it is complete disregard. And, if you try to look at all the people who registered to vote in Connecticut, it is numerically impossible to get everybody into the polls from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like, unless everybody was in there for 2.2 seconds, got in, and ran out the door. It's just not even. So you design a system that you don't expect, but maybe 20, 40, 30% come out to vote. You just design it that way.
And
Isn't that something?
Yeah,
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes.
And another piece that's connected to the police and our voting process, our civic engagement, at the polls, there were police posted up throughout our cities here in Connecticut. So what if you were a person who's had a bad encounter, black and brown person, bad encounter with the police, you might not want to go to your polls because, you didn't want to have another encounter with the police, intimidation, threats, etc. And yeah, you're right. There's no consideration of black and brown people in the state of Connecticut when it comes to the voting process.
Right. And here's the other piece. We have to have an excuse to vote before the actual vote. Right, so this potential law will get rid of that. No excuse absentee balloting, early voting, in other words. And we've heard this argument. Well, we have to do this by state statute and the state statute. Blah 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 blah. Well, we did it when we did motor voter. Back in 2012, I was here. We were here. I remember that fight, and that was about a 3-4 year fight that we ultimately got. When you go and get an ID, right, an official Connecticut ID or a driver's license, you can then get registered to vote. We got the technology to do this stuff. We've heard every time we have this conversation, they talk about there's fraud in it. No, no, not buying it, not buying it. And this, this archaic thing. I remember Selective Service signed me up for service back in the 1980s. We've had this technology for a long time. So I'm not buying that other argument that somehow opening up the vote then means there's voter fraud. That's just not the truth. Mm-hmm. That's a bogus argument.
Mm-hmm. These 25 and 30-year incumbents know that folks can come for them if you open up the access. We're coming for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
You will have to now campaign for your seat and fight for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's the democracy we live in.
That's right.
You have to get hired.
That's right. That's right. And then rehired. Right? And if you're not doing a good job, we're getting rid of you, and we'll get somebody else in there that will do the job. Right? Mm-hmm. So the last thing I want to talk about that really is important is that we don't have any uniformity across this state as far as election administration. Elections, it's federal elections, but every election is handled by states. All right? And it is very local. So you have voter registers in towns, here in Connecticut in particular, but all over the country. What we don't have here in the state of Connecticut is we don't have a regularized way or a uniform way of doing it. So, for example, last year, we had some towns, Vernon is one of them, where the registered voter didn't want to put the ballot box outside. So they had a fight where the ballot box was going to be, inside or outside. It was ridiculous. It's ridiculous the way we do this. These inconsistent practices result in long lines and people just saying, forget about it.
And confusion.
Especially when it comes to, as you all both were saying, when it comes to black and brown and indigenous folk and our communities. Our communities suffer most. We're not going to put up with that.
Now, you hustling to work. You got to drop off your kids.
Right.
You got maybe a sick or elderly family member. You ain't got time to go sit in the line for 4 hours to vote. They know this. When they even redistrict, they do that on purpose so they can have all of this group here. And the lines be down the street, and you can't even get in the parking lot. They know this.
So and what we're really talking about is voter intimidation.
Right.
This is what this boils down to. This is the modern day version of voter administration. Look, you know what? Another thing I was fascinated with, it wasn't until the 1960s that we had here laws that said you had to have a literacy test here in Connecticut. Literacy here in Connecticut.
Right here.
We ain't talking about down south. We talking about here. Most of us can't tell you after who was the first president of the United States? I think we can come up with that one. Name me the second, third, fourth, and fifth president of the United States.
Right.
We're going to be hard pressed. Right?
Most Americans don't know that.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. White folk don't know it. Right. Let alone some of us. So Connecticut, we're saying coming to the 21st century. And supporting these two Senate bills will do that for us. Now, it is already too late. Let me just say this right here. It's already too late to submit live testimony. Mm-hmm. But each of you can sit for a moment and submit written testimony. So by the time you see this video, when you see this video, we'll have links to Hamden Action Now and CTBW and More Money CT's websites, where we will put up, how you submit a written testimony. You have tomorrow, both of these hearings will happen. You have time to do that. And spend just a few moments and offer your support to Senate Bill. Give me the number again, Rhonda.
820.
Senate Bill 820 and Senate Bill 5. And Senate Bill 5. Yes. Now, we got a heavy lift tomorrow, because not only are we going to be talking about expanding the vote tomorrow, we're also going to hear they're going to hear testimony, public hearing and testimony for Let's get it right now.
HB 6662.
6662. It is the bill that says that makes the declaration for the state of Connecticut that racism is a public health crisis. Now I'm gonna just stop right there and pause just for a moment and say who's gonna argue with us on that? Y'all gonna argue on that? Yep, that's we arguing about racism and the public health crisis. The numbers are very clear. It is stark. We can't be no more clear than that. And what this bill actually offers us the opportunity to do is one, to create a permanent commission that will be charged with making sure that anything that has to do with some racialized element, they get the opportunity to speak on it, weigh in on it, have some say as to the outcome of it. Right? That's what this bill, that's what they're looking for. Right? That's one of the major features of this particular hear me clearly. There are a couple of different versions of bills that are going to be offered. They're going to get together and work that out. What we want to make sure that people do is they say yes to this declaration.
Yes.
All right.
Take the opportunity. This is another opportunity. Last week we had an opportunity through a Senate bill, and this week we have an opportunity through a House bill. And you know, they have some similar things and some things that are a bit different. But both of them gives us the opportunity to recognize that racism is a public health crisis. And
absolutely.
Put our voice to it, you know.
Yeah, racism. People continue to have a very good time denying that it even exists and continuing to blame Black, brown, and indigenous people for their conditions. So be ready. Like you said, who's going to refute that? There's going to be plenty. I already heard it yesterday. I hear it every time I get on there. Well, everybody has the same opportunities, you know, so why don't you just take advantage of it? Can you define equity? Gail, can you define equity? So I'm ready for it tomorrow.
We do need to define racism because, you know, and I, you know, am hopeful that they will take some time to go through this because, you know, looking at some of the definitions out there, you know, to look in Webster's dictionary, their definition of racism is racist. I mean, really, I should have screenshot or something and put it up so that everybody could see it because it is absolutely ridiculous. So we do need to take some time to be on the same page about really what racism is. You know, what is a definition? What is a working definition? Operational definition, you know, so that, you know, we can at least in this state here of Connecticut understand what we're talking about when we say racism.
And clearly, in fact, what we do need to do is capture data across all of the state offices and all of the state bureaucracy, and do it in a systematic way, but also do it in a regularized way. Each department does it a little bit different, and then we get gobbledygook. We can't, you know, those of us, any of us who do any research using data, you know, you can manipulate data to say just about whatever it is that you want. You can declare a ham sandwich as a real person. They've done it just about. Corporations are now human beings. That's a whole nother matter. That's a whole nother, they're persons, right? But that's a whole nother thing. What I think this bill gives us the opportunity to do is to do some regularizing of our both the state and municipal data so we can get real measurements. You want to know what the differences are? Well, there's strike around race, around ethnicity, around socioeconomic status, around age, etc.
Yes.
And geographically, all right? Here in Hartford, you know, there's some zip codes we can we know we can declare it when they're going to prison. By age, by the time that a child is in third grade, based on the zip code, right? We know that in some instances. So let's get regularized. Let's get that, you know, accessibility right? Those are measurable things. So that's what this would do. This would give us an opportunity to have the state standardize and really do data collection so that we can make informed decisions instead of you are always saying, y'all, that's just what happened to you. No, that's not what just happened to me. That happened to 25% of the residents of this state. If we get the right data.
And then once we get the data, we need to have a commission that can act. If people are dying at childbirth, black women at a alarming rate, you need to be able to step in and tell the Department of Health that we need sweeping changes statewide and make policy to make sure that the hospitals, and the providers are accountable for that. And I don't need to hear about pre-existing conditions. I mean, that's been like, we've been hearing that forever. But my thing is that once you collect this data, because we do a lot of data collection too, and we're going to get some good data out of this commission, but they better be ready to act.
That's right. And that's I believe the reason for a permanent commission is, in fact, now you'll have people who are dedicated to doing that, who are dedicated to saying, hold up, wait a minute, before y'all get too far down the way, there's some financial implications of this data. There are some systems implications for this data. And now we need to be ready to do that. Right now, we're doing that hodgepodge. There are certain groups that have that, that opportunity, who got staff paid and got the resources to do that. Now we'll have a commission that whose job it is really is to pay attention to that there will be paid staff attached to this commission that will help us do that, right? That I think this is extremely important and extremely valuable across the state and across our bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I definitely know that it is very important that who this commission is, it needs to represent us. We need to be there. We need to have black people. We need to have brown people. We need to have indigenous people and Asian people that's involved in this data collection process. We need to have people from the ground, grassroots community people involved in it, and we have to make sure all of our groups are there. People of faith, is represented in that process. We need to make sure we have LGBTQ people represented in that process. We need to make sure we have the youth voice involved in this in order for it to really serve the communities. So that's very important.
People who are otherwise able gotta be here. Gotta be
Absolutely.
Here. All right, because their voice is just as important as any other voice. Because they, in fact, are the people who are at the other end, having to suffer through all the crap that gets put on them because of their ability or their different abilities. Absolutely. Right. So it is imperative. Again, folks, what we're asking you to do is to step up and be strong. Here is an opportunity where your voice can be heard, and can be heard both positively and specifically. That you'll go on record saying, I support this kind of thing. So there are two bills. There are two committees, right? There are three bills, actually, with two committees. All right. There's one committee that's hearing HB 6662. All right. That's in the Appropriations Committee. The GAE, the Government Administration,
and elections.
All right. Woo! I'm getting tired.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. But the Senate bill, right? These Senate bills, both 826, I believe that's right. Right, and then Senate Bill
820 out of GAE.
Out of the GAE, and Senate Bill 5 are the expanding the vote bills. Listen, folks, we're gonna run this out here. We're talking to you right now, but go to our Facebook page, moremoneyct.org, ctblackwomen.org, and Rhonda, yours?
I am at Hamden Action Now. And I'm also have it on Hamden.
All right. Hit us up on our platforms. There'll be more information. And listen, folks, we're going to continue on the struggle. We're in the struggle, on the struggle. We are not going to end until we get what we need to have for our folk. All right, and I know, because I'm a person of faith. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah. Any final word, Pamela?
Make sure you get your testimonies in tomorrow.
Yes.
Rhonda?
Testimony early. If you're now that you were going to be writing it in, you could be as long as you want it to be, and share and call everybody you know and tell them to submit testimony. We want 300 people to even. I hope 300 people signed up to give testimony, and they got to be up till like 4 a.m. listening to it. That'd be wonderful.
Wouldn't that be a great thing? And for those of us who are kind of addicts at this by now, we're gonna be popping between one hearing to the other hearing to the other hearing to the other hearing. We're gonna be in it.
I have 3 monitors. They're all going to be going at the same time.
All right.
Yes.
Family, thank you for paying attention and listening to us for these brief few moments. I hope you hear that our care, our love, and our passion for what it is that we are about. We are about this life. Let me just tell you right there. I'm stealing from the young people. I know I'm not so young anymore, but we're about this life. Right. All right. Peace, everybody.
Peace.